Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. I'm here in Atlanta for the SWAC 2024-2025, if you hadn't seen earlier today, for the men's and women's basketball media day. Women's media day, and tomorrow will be the men's media day. I'm here with Charles and A.D. Drew, who got to be a part of that as Roy did the production for us. So we're here with episode 550. This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab from the hotel. Welcome to episode 550 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. In short, we just call it the HBCU sports pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-hosts Mike Wash and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to our KSOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper. And again, I can't say from the beautiful home of Texas Southern University because we're in Atlanta. Maybe we can say Clark Atlanta University since I'm always on the mind, or maybe it's Morehouse College on the mind. But here we're in Atlanta, just to let you know what that looks like. With that being said, Charles, how you doing today?
Doing well, Doc. I'm like Ernie Banks. Let's play two today. So we had an earlier broadcast, and now we're doing the show tonight. So fun time here in Atlanta today as far as with the SWAC Women's Media Day. I thought we did a great job on that broadcast. Go back and go check it out. But a lot of great things came out of SWAC Women's Media Day today. So we'll get into that as far as getting into the program tonight.
No doubt about it. When you say play two today, big news today. But before we show a little sign of it, since it's historic, and we talk about HBCU baseball and those players doing it, we'll make the connection as we can and find a way to do it, even though there's maybe not any direct connection. But we make it do what it's do. With that being said, A.D. Drew, how are you doing today?
Brother, I'm doing fine. Can't put this thing down, man. I'm trying to walk away from this podcasting thing, but it's like that. It's like that girlfriend. You know, you break up with her, you go back. You break up with her, you go back again. So that's what this was. Because I was not planning on going on the air today, doing our first show. You know, I was working behind the scenes for about the first hour and a half, 2 hours of the show, and then when it came time to eat and there was no way to get a break, okay, I guess I got to fill in the gaps as I know how to do this. And then here we go today. But Charles, I got to talk about you, man. You lied to me, man. You said you went back to the hotel and took a nap, man. Man, that bed looked just like when the housekeeper did it, man. You're doing a good job over there, man. What happened? You fell out on the floor?
I was not going to be on camera with sheets rumply back there. So, yeah, I made up my bed back there.
Hey, you got some home training.
Yeah, I got home training.
Good stuff there. With that being said, Otani did go 50-50 today. Significant matches. Obviously, we've had a lot of HBCU players that were legendary status in the game of MLB, and this is another historic moment. Yesterday, he stole his 50th base, I believe, and then today he hit the 50th home run, if it wasn't the day before. As we've been on the road and traveling, please excuse me if I get my days mixed up in terms of what took place. But that's a big deal. And with that, I'll just ask you as a general news today, in terms of your favorite HBCU baseball player, maybe who that is, and then what are your thoughts in terms of this 50-50 status in terms of stolen bases and home runs?
Yeah, I mean, that is monumental. I mean, 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases. And I mean, just being a fan of baseball, just Ohtani's plate coverage. I mean, it's amazing to sit and watch. I mean, balls that are on the inside, he turns on them. Fastballs that are away, he hits them away. I mean, he is the most complete baseball player that I've seen. Probably since going back to a guy named Ricky Henderson. So that was a guy that I enjoyed watching growing up from just a offensive weapon status, but defensively, I'm an Ozzie Smith guy. Who's my favorite HBCU baseball player? Woo, man, that's a tough one. I mean, oh man, come back to me on that one. I got to think on that one for a second now.
All right, AD Drew, you want to test at it? What are your thoughts on 50-50 club? Obviously, we thought 40-40 was a big deal when the keeper hit that. And just last year, we had the 40-70 in terms of stolen bases and home runs. Never been happening. And now we hit a new plateau with 50-50 after the judge obviously tore down everything with his home runs that he made, at least as a New York Yankee hitting a record there. Hitting the threshold, and he's on the gap of being the home run leader this year. But what are your thoughts on 50-50 for Ohtani?
Man, it is amazing. When you sit here and think about it, that is both art and skill when you think about 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases. The art part, there is an art to stealing bases. That's why you only have seen 4 people in history steal over 100 bases in the season. Maury Wills being the first, followed by Lou Brock, then Ricky Henderson, and then Vince Coleman. Those are the only 4 players who've ever stolen 100 bases in Major League Baseball. So that is the art part. But the skill to hit a home run, I guarantee you it's easier to steal a base than to hit a home run when it comes to baseball, because you could walk, get on base, and get a stolen base. Here, you could be on the back end of a double steal and get credited for a stolen base. But a home run, whereas you and the pitcher mano a mano, and you got to hit the ball 350, 400 plus feet on the fly. Yeah, that is definitely a skill. And you asked my favorite HBCU baseball player. My favorite HBCU baseball player became my favorite HBCU baseball player after he was one of my favorite players. When then I discovered he was an HBCU guy, and that would have to be Lou Brock, because growing up as a St. Louis Cardinals fan, and mind you, when I was growing up, Lou Brock was coming towards the twilight of his career, but still. Watching the Lou Brock, Charles mentioned Ozzie Smith, went from Lou Brock to Ozzie Smith to Vince Coleman to all through that 80s era. That's when I became the late 70s, early 80s era. That's when I became a big St. Louis Cardinals fan growing up in St. Louis, Missouri.
So.
It was later on that I found out that he happened to be a Southern grad. So once I found that up, he just went up even higher on my personal favorite list.
Good stuff by both of you all. Charles, did you want to jump back in there, or are you going to still hold it out for a little bit in terms of your HBC? You don't want to tell on yourself?
Jackie Robinson, who was the athletic director at Houston Tillotson. Yes, I'm going to go with
I like that. And it's accurate when you talk about Houston Tillotson and being the AD there. Excuse me.
Can I try the honorable mention? Just a quick honorable mention?
Yes, sure. Get you.
How about Larry Doby of Virginia State?
Yeah.
First African American in the American League.
Excellent. Vince Coleman. I like what he was able to do. So a lot of good ones out there. Andre Dawson.
I didn't want to use my FAMU bias there.
Yeah, because we're going to get into that. We know you weren't, so we know what that is. how that's going. Ralph Gard, Grambling State, you got that. And the reason those kind of came up to me was the Andre Dawson Ralph Gard Classic that is held by Atlanta, one of Charles' old favorite teams. I don't know if he's still claiming the Atlanta Braves, but
I do Marvin Freeman with the Atlanta Braves. I can get into my Braves now.
yeah, I figure I'd find a way to tune you up on that one just to let you say it from that perspective. But before I give you a chance to maybe talk about some news of the day, Charles, and maybe you can use that in terms of your thoughts of the media day today, I'd be remiss if we didn't get a chance to ask AD Drew his thoughts on the FAMU athletic director, Angela Suggs. Obviously, we had Brian on Tuesday, and he shocked us when he talked about his roommate was her husband. And so I don't know if you can top that one, but I'm sure that you can share at least your thoughts on the announcement of Angela Suggs. So if you would, go ahead.
No, I cannot top that with having bumped with the husband of the new athletic director. But I did know of them when they were on campus at Florida A&M University. We didn't necessarily run in the same circles, but I did know of them when we were on campus there together. FAMU Board of Trustees, please don't mess this one up. Don't mess this one up. This is not the basketball coach. This is not the football hire. Let's get this one right, y'all. This should be the quickest nomination to voting to approval in FAMU board history. I'm telling you, there should be no debate. There should be no question. Suggs has interviewed or been considered multiple times, at least 2 times that I know of, for the athletic director's position. They kept saying that she didn't have any experience, but the last 2 athletic directors you had no athletic director experience either. So throw that argument out the window, you know. But if you talk about somebody who is somebody in the state of Florida who can navigate and understands the athletic portion of it, having worked at FAMU, having been on the Florida Classic board, chairman of the Florida Classic board, but also has the political clout that you need in that type of position, especially with Tallahassee being the state capital. I think she has the political clout and the political connections that, in my opinion, can help take FAMU to a level that no other candidate, internal or external, can at this point in time. So I am Team Suggs. I'm 100% Team Suggs. If this one goes left, I will be the first one to crack the yolk and put the egg on my face.
Something tells me with the interim president and the news moving this fast about the hire, that they, if not okay this, they may have even pushed this to go in this direction. Something tells me, but to your point, I can understand FAMU alumni, their concern based on what has taken place with the athletic hires, basketball coaches of late, but something sneaky suspicion. And I got word of this couple of weeks ago, to be frank with you, but I was asked to shut it down, so I left it there, even with you all, because you didn't share any frame with me, and I didn't want to belabor the point. I knew y'all probably were quietly hearing some things and just because of as what you just said about making sure it wasn't messed up, because so many people in your circle support this hire. I caught word through the back channels of this. Honestly, probably within, if not hours, days of the previous athletic director being released, that she was at the top of the list. But once again, because of what we do and the trust that people have in us, you keep this to bed. You keep this on a need to know basis. Oh, I agree. I've been in situations
at that point in time,
especially when you think you got a winner. It's like the Christmas present when you've shaken the box and you heard about it or you've seen it. You kind of be quiet because you don't mess it up, because you know how your parents would do and be like, oh, so you've been sneaking in the thing. Well, how about we get you a different present and you just sick because you like, I know I seen that. And you done unwrapped all your presents not there. And you're like, what happened? They knew you snuck in their cookie jar. So I get it. With that being said, before we go to our first break, Charles, give me your thoughts on today in terms, or if you wanted to go in a different direction with some news of the day, you can do that as well.
No, I thought today went very well, and I think it was very well received. Kudos to the SWAC for putting a spotlight on basketball, especially when we're starting to get into the thick of things with regards to football. But SWAC Women's Media Basketball Day, and then you have the men on tomorrow. But a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm in terms of coaches showcasing their teams, and it's the thing that kind of stands out is. You have a lot of roster churning, as you mentioned, a lot of roster overhaul. So it was a lot of coaches really showcasing what they're going to be putting on the court this upcoming season. And we got a lot of great interviews today, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as we move forward in the show. But I thought the energy was very well received today. And then just being here in Atlanta, where this SWAC basketball tournament will take place later on this spring, I think there was a lot of energy in the room.
Charles, you've been proud of me today. In between all this, I got a chance to go over to the Fulton County tennis field complex, if you would, because they have the HBCU tennis championship this weekend. So I got a chance to get over there. Ali, as it may seem, is the current provost, Dr. Carl Goodman, who was formerly a tennis coach at FAMU, as you know, AD Drew, and was a championship tennis coach there and built that program, or rebuilt it, I should say, as it one time was very solid. Obviously, people know about Thea Gibson in terms of that work that was able to get done. But he's now the provost at Texas Southern University, but when he was at FAMU, started this tournament. Now the other folks run it, if you would. But he reminded me that the HBCU National Championship took place. It fell right in the spot that's going on now and goes through Saturday without any rain. They might have to push it back or whatever to get the championship in. But it was sunny and looking good today. Great matches, a lot of different institutions out there from the GCAC, now known as the HBCU AC, SIAC, CIAA, MEAC, SWAC, and some independents, A&T, Tennessee State, and Hampton. With men's and or women's teams out there for tennis. So fascinating to see how that worked. It was a great sight to see and just wanted to support and congratulate Carl. This is like the 25th year that he's getting it done. So I thought that was a big deal for anything that lasts that long. It's certainly putting in the work. So he is taking his passion and putting in the work. And it's a living ideal of supporting HBCU tennis programs to get it down there. And they actually pay for the lodging of the teams. They get 2 meals, they get lunch and dinner out there. And so they basically just have to get there, which goes a long way to support those programs in terms of what that looks like. So I did want to cover that and give a shout out to Provost Goodman in terms of what he's getting done. With that being said, let's take our first break. We'll come back on the other side and let's get back into some football talk. It's football around the corner, Charles. It's football around the corner. We want to talk a little bit about some football. So after this break, we'll be back on the other side to talk about some what?
Football.
Hey, grab me one too.
Ryan Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN SportsWrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN SportsWrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Choice Hotels is a family of brands that helps you get the most for your money so you can be any traveler you want to be.
You could be a free hot breakfast hero at a comfort hotel.
Yes!
That's how you waffle.
Mr. This script got a plot twist at a Radisson hotel.
A business big leaguer.
Go for key.
Even the ultimate pool float inflator.
With 22 brands and the best value for your money, Choice Hotels has a stay for any you. Book direct at choicehotels.com, where travels come true. Gotta get the corners.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, yeah, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles Bishop and A.D. Drew. Let's get in some matchups as we span off from Tuesday. We unveiled the top 10, if you would, those receiving votes, so top 7 poll rankings, if you would, for the mid-major division on Tuesday as we had our first release on the Sunday edition of the major division, if you would. Let me reflect on that and just catch everybody up to let them know what those top matchups were. Going back to Sunday, top 7, and we'll start with those receiving votes to get you all 10 of those programs, if you would. Receiving vote starts at South Carolina State. The Bulldogs are 1 and 2. You got the Morgan State Bears also 1 and 2. And then you have the Prairie View Panthers that are 1 and 2 and 0 and 1 in the conference race. The top 7 programs are Texas Southern at 1 and 1. They are 1 and 0 in the SWAC race with 159 points, and they stay at the 7th spot. Number 6 was Howard Bison, 2 and 1. At number 5 was Grambling State Tigers. At number 4 was Tennessee State Tigers. Number 3 was Hampton Pirates. And number 2 is Jackson State Tigers. And number 1 is Florida A&M Rattlers. Howard sits at 2 and 1. Grambling sits at 2 and 1. Tennessee State sits at 2 and 1. Hampton sits at 2 and 1, and Jackson State at 2 and 1, as well as FAMU. Of those 7, 5 of them were new entrants this week. After 5 teams fell out, we've never had that in the top 7 race, but there's always room for something new to take place. And that was Howard, Grambling, Tennessee State, Hampton, and Jackson State that jumped in the race, and Jackson State jumped all the way to number 2. It was fascinating because we have a top 5-7 matchup between number 2 and number 5. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We also have a top 7 matchup with Hampton and Howard, which is 3 versus 6. But let me give you the mid-major division, if you would. Teams that are receiving votes at the mid-major level were Elizabeth City State Vikings at 2 and 1, Fayetteville State Broncos at 1 and 1, Fort Valley State Wildcats at 1 and 1, and 1 and 1 in the conference race. Number 7, you have the Florida Memorial Lions that actually jumped into the poll ranks this week at a 1-1-1 record. Yes, there was a tie, and we talked about why that took place. At number 6, Shaw Bears are 2 and 1. They fall from the 3 spot. At number 5 is Virginia State Trojans at 1 and 1, remain there. At number 4 was Virginia Union that also remained in that ranking. You had at number 3, Virginia State. At number 3 is Winston-Salem State Rams, who are 2 and 1. And then you have Clark Atlanta Panthers that are 2-0 and 1. They tie with Florida Memorial. And at number 1, you have Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls that are 3 and 0 that have a big matchup that create a top 7 matchup at the mid-major level when you have Winston-Salem State versus Virginia State, which is a 3-6 matchup. And you also have a Virginia Union traveling to Johnson C. Smith that gives us a number 1 hosting a number 4 team coming into the barn, if you would. With that being said, I wanted to kind of go outside of the rankings as we last left off. I wanted to go down with a matchup that I think is fascinating. Frankly, and I'm not the one that usually drive on the hot seat. I'm not saying the coach will be on the hot seat, but I certainly know there will be some fans that are very uncomfortable. Whoever comes out of the game, this matchup with a loss. That's Southern going to Prairie. Southern, probably a different need win for a different reason. You want to get off in the conference race going well. Remember, for all those that didn't know, that last weekend, the game against Jackson State, where they really got dominated in a lot of ways, to be frank. The good thing about that, while the bad thing was that you rival and you lost, it didn't count in the conference standings. This week it does. As we said, Texas Southern beat Prairie View earlier, so Prairie View is 0-1 in the conference. While we think there might be some 2 and 3 loss teams, I don't think you want to fall in an 0-2 hole in the West. So I think this is a need win. This is your second home game as well. So there's a need to protect your turf. And so I think that's the case. Obviously, you had Dooley that was let go early last year. Part of that was some things about disagreements or what it looks like, but obviously a lot of that also had to do with the records that made it much more a thing of the past in terms of what that looks like. Emmett Jones is concerned, as he says, he doesn't see Southern with offense, and thus far I can see why you would say that. But back in the day, a little while, this is a game that seemed like Southern would always kind of get right. Going to the Southern, going back to Dawson Odom's coming off some big, tough losses, he would come into Prairie View and get it. If that changed, I'm not sure. For the old Southern fans, they just can't get an idea that you can't get past Southern with a lot of that. I text you all in the group, Charles, that talked about there is essentially 4 errors when you look at Southern and Prairie View. If you allow me to go a little detail on this. You know, there's the early era before the 60s when both teams were pretty good, but Prairie was dominating with championships, if you would, in terms of that, winning 5 of their championships, 2 in that era of the 60s and some out of the 50s. Where, you know, they had a winning record, if you don't want to call it dominant against Southern. And this last current era, where surprising some folks, if you go back to the last, 17-some games, 9 and 8, was it? Yeah. Prairie View actually has a winning record. It's, you know, a slight 9 and 8, but most people wouldn't think that. But you have 2 errors in the middle were literally disastrous. Or you had the first one was a 16-game win streak until 1988, where Prairie View finally won the game. And then they go on a 15-year win streak. So there's literally a period in time where the record for Prairie View was 1-31 against Southern, or 31-1 if you're a Southern fan, in terms of the era, which is a lot of folks are in that pocket. The second era was championship era for Southern, and it was an era with no scholarship. But the first 16-0, there's no rationale to say why that took place.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of Southern fans, frankly, that just like that's Prairie View, but the era has changed. But I don't think people have understood that. But with all those dynamics coming in, the past is the past. But I'm fascinating to see what that looks like in terms of, exactly. You know, I just spit games, spit facts, and you can go look at it in terms of those numbers, in terms of what that looks like. So, Charles, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you would like to not think of a must-win game being in September, but in a lot of ways, this is a must-win game for Prairie View, especially you don't want to be 0-2 in the SWAC West, and you're fighting an uphill battle the rest of the season. And then you have a wounded Southern Jaguar team coming in, I think, from a psyche standpoint. I think the Southern fan base is in disarray right now with regards to how the program has looked, not so much with Terrence Graves, but the way that it's looked over the past 2-3 seasons, and there has not been a lot to particularly really cheer about with the Southern team. So this is a huge game, and it's kind of sliding under the radar. But for those reasons in particular, I think this is sort of a fascinating game to sit back and watch. And when you say it, Doc, that there was a 15-win streak, a 16-win streak. There is a generation that they just cannot fathom a loss to Prairie View. I mean, it was the same thing with Jackson State fans, and for a while, a loss to Prairie View, it's like, what is wrong with our program? So it's very interesting how that dynamic is sitting out there and sitting in play in regards to this game. But we've seen a wounded Southern team go into Prairie View and somehow come away with a win. So this is a big one. This is a very big one for Prairie View this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, and some of those wins were quite lopsided. They weren't just like a close. Prairie View's win at Southern would be generally close, but they would get them done. But the ones at Prairie View, just intriguing for me, would be just outstanding because they really would come in there and beat them up, except for maybe one game. I'm going to go to you, Drew, with that same thought process on the Southern matchup. But let me get the data out there since somebody questioned about that. Yes, PVMU is 9-8 versus Southern since 2006.
Wow.
9-8 against Southern versus 2006. The 4 periods that I speak about, I call 2 of them mini periods, which the undefeated streaks was starting back from 1949 to 1971. Prairie View had a winning record. And from 2006, as I just told you, the present, another winning record. But from 1972 to 1987, it was no contest. Literally, you couldn't win a game. Then you finally get the victory in 1988. So between 1988 to a victory in 1987. But from 1988 to 2005, you have another losing streak. This one consisted of 15 games. So it's amazing when you break it down and look at the numbers, because I hear people talking about the matchup all the time and they just say this is Prairie View. So I thought it was interesting when I kind of tried to figure out what that looks like, because in the era with KJ Black and with Dr. Henry Fraser III now, that decade was like a 5-5, where the last game Southern won it and actually played for a championship. But that was the era that kind of started the change in terms of not only Prairie View getting some wins, but evening up that series over this period of time. Drew, what are your thoughts?
Y'all help me out with some history, Doc. The defending SWAC West champion is who?
Prairie View.
And prior to Prairie View winning the SWAC West, who won the SWAC West?
Alcorn? No, the year before.
That was exactly. But we've got 2 fan bases who have forgotten, and it's not like I'm talking about that doing that streak that you're talking about in the early 2000s, Doc. I am talking post-pandemic,
right?
Era that we're talking about. And correct me if I'm wrong, the coach of the SWAC West champion last year was whom? The same coach that y'all will say who's on the hot seat? This stuff just does not add up here, Dr. Cavil. So with all that being said, I'm gonna talk to Southern folks first. Are y'all making a cry for a certain person named Dawson Odoms to, because when
I was trying to tell him.
I mean, Dawson Odoms wasn't doing that, but if he wasn't winning the SWAC, get to the SWAC championship game, he was there. He won a couple of SWAC titles during his era there. I'm really trying to, because that was before I was MEAC at that point in time. So I need some help with this type stuff because I was MEAC at that point in time. Something about this just does not make sense, Dr. Cavil and Charles Bishop. We are just
Yeah, I feel
in
you.
the era. Hold up, let me. I'm supposed to turn it back over. In an era, first of all, conference play is just getting started. Most people have not even played a conference game yet. Yeah, we know Texas Southern Prairie View plays their first game, but they've been out of it since then. And, we're talking about coach consistently being let go at the end of the season. Come on now, y'all. And last thing, and I'm turning it back over. If we haven't learned anything in the last 3-4 years, where you should figure something out. 2 losses in the SWAC West has not hurt a champion.
Very
because
very true.
When is the last time somebody won the SWAC West with fewer than 3 losses?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's a point well taken. Charles, you wanted to retort?
Well, it's funny, AD puts these questions out there, but let me just say, it's different. It's different being a part of that Jackson State fan base, that Southern fan base, because you're fighting ghosts, all right? And there's the ghost of WC, the ghost of Big Daddy hanging over Jackson State. Pete Richardson is that ghost to me for Southern. So everything is sort of, especially from the 90s forward, you're measuring it against, that particular era. So it becomes sort of I had a great conversation with a Jackson State and Southern coach in that regards, but they talk about that dynamic of that ghost being present in the fan base. That's how they react. If they don't win in a certain manner, even though the success might be there, but if they don't win in a certain manner, that becomes an issue, and that becomes an issue that just hangs over that particular team.
Yeah, and I'll say this and I don't think it's supposed to make sense, and I think we get it twisted because you can have fans and allow them, but that doesn't mean the administration is going to do anything. So I like to separate the two. So I think what I'm saying more is not necessarily a coach on the hot seat from that perspective. I'm just saying the disgruntlement of fans and that fan base will start to further. The unique thing for Prairie View's position, they're not quite as violent and loud. When I say violent, I'm not talking about physically violent. I'm talking about mentally violent in terms of them voicing their frustration. Prairie View does the same thing. There's been a concern about some coaches really going back to Willie Simmons, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Some folks that were not happy about Willie Simmons over his last couple of years. People are kind of married to what he did that first year, and people think he let a division championship go then when he lost to Grambling and ended up winning it. That was his only loss. And you remember the last 2 years, he had good winning seasons, but they were not anything close to a championship.
Yeah.
So there's some folks that were disgruntled. You talking about having a ghost of Big Daddy, coach of Richardson. You got a ghost of what is now Dr. Henry Frazier III.
Yeah.
He took him out of the slumber and won a national championship. There's a lot of folks that are still fans and hated to see him leave to North Carolina Central. And remember, that's not because he got booted out. That's because he wanted to get back closer to home, particularly with his wife at the time, and he went to North Carolina Central. So it was not something that the fans were pushing him out. This is a decision he made. So a lot of folks would love to have him back, to be frank with you. And what has happened after that, while Prairie View has been extremely competitive, one of the unique things about Prairie View is they're a bridesmaid. They had some wonderful teams, and they would come in second place, but they would end up losing to either Grambling or Southern, usually not both, but they would lose the tiebreaker or have one less loss, and those teams would play for a championship when Prairie View had really good teams. And now you get to the fact that they get over the hump in terms of 2 of the last 3 years. So you got a lot of fans that are feeling that we've done what we need to do outside maybe the true fan base that people pickle them for. But in terms of the players in Texas and where they are, they think they should be fighting for a championship. And I know that's weird for other folks, but just like I tell you, when you talk about the records of 9-8, what they have done against Jackson State, what they've done against many of these programs, they've been bridesmaids and they felt that they should be playing for the championship. The last thing I'll put on this that I think is fascinating, think about this. There was a coach that played for a championship in back-to-back years, and he's no longer a head coach at all. That's Dooley. Dooley played for a championship at Prairie View, and then went back the next year and played for a championship with Southern.
Yeah.
He's no longer a head coach. So while you talk about the West is fickle in that terms of that, but for whatever reason, I don't think people understand the uniqueness of how Prairie View fans feel about their position of what it needs to be playing for a championship. And as much as Jackson State and Southern think it's their right, and now Alcorn over there, you got Prairie View fans that believe it is their right, particularly whether it's young fans that are used to winning against these programs. I just told you the date. These folks coming in 2006, they don't see anything magical about Southern. Hell, they got a winning record. They used to winning against Southern, frankly. And then you go back again, I tell you about those folks in the 60s that won national championship and beat Southern to sleep, 50s and 60s. Some of those folks, particularly 60s, still around. They have nothing fascinating to say about Southern. They think about the days that beat them, and they still trying to understand why y'all allow Southern to do stuff. So on this side of the tracks, as you want to say, it's a totally different framework about how you all may feel about Southern. FAMU Southern as a rival there, or Jackson State rival there. They be like, that just Southern.
Can I say something about, since you mentioned the Prairie View coaching staff, I got to say something about the Southern coaching staff. You know, you talk about the craziness of running Dooley out of time, and then Southern goes and hires probably the greatest quarterback, one of the greater quarterbacks that we've seen in SWAC history with the Totten Rice duo, and he's the quarterback coach at Southern. And then they go and also and hire a guy who took his team to 3 Celebration Bowls. He's not even an assistant head coach. He's a position coach there at Southern. So talk about how crazy some of this stuff is. And I'm talking about Fred McNair when I say that, you know. So you're right, Dr. Cavil. This stuff is weird when these teams get getting together.
And Doc, you talk about Prairie View being a bridesmaid. It's just odd. I mean, they lose to Jackson State in the SWAC championship. That might be a once in a 10-year team. The history still being written on that. And the same in regards to losing to FAMU. I mean, because you think about all the pro players that were on that FAMU team. So that could be a once in a 10-year team. History still being written. But that's is very interesting, that the bridesmaid perspective from the Prairie View fan base.
Right. So we're way above it. Let's take a break here, but I think that was great discussion and giving people some insight that they probably just don't normally get. And so wanted to share that when I hear all the talk about Southern and how they have dominated, frankly, a lot of other teams, but it's not the case for Prairie. People just don't really. Well, stick with us. We'll be back at the break, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of these top 7 matchups, and we'll call it a show.
Choice Hotels is a family of brands that helps you get the most for your money so you can be any traveler you want to be.
You could be a free hot breakfast hero in a comfort hotel.
Yes!
That's how you waffle.
Mr. This script got a plot twist at a Radisson hotel.
A business big leaguer.
Go for key.
Even the ultimate pool float inflator.
With 22 brands and the best value for your money, Choice Hotels has a stay for any you. Book direct at choicehotels.com, where travels come true. Got to get the corners.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties. Through its programs, Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and parenting education coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield, never not working.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. As we get into our last segment, I want to talk about some of these top 7 matchups. First, if you would, let me do the mid-major version of this. I want to look at this 3-6 matchup with Winston-Salem State coming in at number 3 against Virginia State Trojans. They were picked in the preseason to win the CIAA. I have them ranked this week in week number 2 for them at number 6. So this is a conference matchup that features top 7 teams. Again, 3 versus 6. So, A.D. Drew, what are your thoughts in terms of the Rams heading to Virginia to take on the Trojans? Can the Rams continue this magical season in terms of them looking like they're in championship form? Will the Virginia State take the next step to show, no, we're going to fight for our own championship in the CIAA?
People have forgotten that at one point, Winston-Salem was the winningest program in the 2000s before they went on this recent 5-year slide that they have been on. So for Winston-Salem to be back in the football business in the CIAA, at least for the younger generation, the Steve Gaithers of the world, there's something right about that, Dr. Cavil. There is something right about that. And Virginia State, we keep talking about Prairie View being a bridesmaid like we did that last segment. Heck, we could say the same thing about Virginia State. Because if it wasn't for Bowie State or Virginia Union, Virginia State would have won that CIAA North many times. So both of these teams, this is a proving game. For Virginia State, y'all thought we were a top team coming out. This is our opportunity to prove it against a team who, let's be real, when they got the schedule and they got those schedule posters back in July, they didn't circle this game. They put W next to this game. They didn't circle this one as a we got to play hard or something like this. They probably chalked this one up to a win. For Winston-Salem State, a victory here, they can no longer sneak up on anybody in the CIAA. Let's keep one last thing in mind, Dr. Cavil. This is only game 1 of the CIAA conference season.
That's a big deal. I like that. Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of this top 7 matchup, 3 versus 6?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely a proven game, and I think one of those games that really kind of turned everybody's heads in regards to Winston-Salem State is the way they fought tooth and nail with supposedly a faster, stronger North Carolina A&T game, a rivalry be damned. But I think when you take a look at it, Winston-Salem State coming in 2-0, a lot of momentum, big overtime win last week over Ohio Dominican. And what sort of Virginia State team are we taking a look at? Are we taking a look at the one that was dominant in the win over Benedict? Or what are we taking a look at with regards to this Virginia State team? And I think, if history is any reminder, I think, the CIAA North had dominance over the CIAA South for a little while. So that you have that factor going in. But I think it'll be a real interesting look-see to see which team comes out on top. But I'll take Virginia State at home. I like what Henry Frazier was able to do, and I saw some things with them in that Hall of Fame game win over Benedict.
I like the way you framed it, not only as a top 5 matchup, as AD talked about this being the first week of conference play, and this is the matchup you get. We're going to stay with you, Charles, but now we're going to go to another top 7 matchup, and this one features the number 1 team for the second consecutive week at Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls. And boy, are they hot. 3-0. They've been number 1 for the second consecutive week, which surprised a lot of folks when they were in the top 7, and then their ascension to the number 1 spot. People were pleasantly surprised from many, but to think they could do it 2 weeks in a row, undoubtedly is throwing some people off. But now they get the test of the last year's champion, playoff contender. A lot of folks believe Virginia Union should be in the hunt this year. They were at the top of the polls at number 1 preseason in mine. They were actually number 2 CIAA in terms of prediction order of finish. But now they sit at number 4. What are your thoughts in terms of this matchup between Johnson C. Smith and Virginia Union Panthers?
Huge privilege in the game for Johnson C. Smith. Like you mentioned, 3-0 to start this season. That hadn't happened since 2013. But then you talk about exercise and ghosts. That's a big boogeyman in Virginia Union. Virginia Union has whooped them past 4 times, and it hadn't been close. But I think what's kind of interesting with regards to Virginia Union, we know Jada Byers, and we know what he brings to the table. But they have a passing game to kind of balance things out a little bit for Virginia Union. So this will be a fun game, especially Virginia Union going to Johnson C. Smith. Would you call it an upset if Johnson C. Smith knocks off Virginia Union, AD?
Yeah.
Drew, what would you say?
Yes. It's an upset. It's Virginia Union, a team that has dominated the CIAA North, Bowie State, Virginia Union. I mean, what more can you say? Not only have they dominated, but the North has dominated the South, except for Fayetteville State. Now, we talk about this Johnson C. Smith team, who comes in 3-0. But they come in 3-0 off, and I hate to say it, 3 of the bottom 10% of teams currently ranked in Division II football. Not in black college football. All Division II football. All 100, and I believe it's 161, 162 teams, something along that line. These are the bottom 10%. They have handled business thus far this season against those teams. You're talking about a Virginia Union team. Say it for not a bad stretch there in the Hampton game would be 3-0 also coming into this game, because they were primed to upset Hampton, be it for not for a couple of turnovers. So yeah. Coach Maurice Flowers, love Coach Maurice Flowers, loved him when he was at Fort Valley, love what he's done at Johnson C. Smith. But just like when he went to Fort Flowers, I had to see that game where he had to earn my respect. This is that game where he earns that respect. Has it been fool's gold, or is this something real? Can we go ahead and buy real stock in Johnson C. Smith? That's what we're gonna find out Saturday.
I like that. Good comments by both of you all in terms of how you break that down. Let's switch it over. But before we switch it over to the major division, I do want to make sure we get out there in terms of this matchup. That was Winston-Salem State versus Virginia State, which is a 3 versus 5 matchup, while the Virginia Union and Johnson C. Smith is a 1 versus 4 matchup. With that being said, I want to go in to the Battle of the HUs, which is a top 7 matchup at Audi Field in Washington, D.C. If you talk to Brian refuses to call Howard right now, in particular this matchup, because he says that Hampton owns the H as they dominated a series. So he calls it Hampton versus Howard. In terms of that matchup. So I'm fascinating. This is a different type of Howard team. They are coming off a MEAC championship, a loss in the the Celebration Bowl, but played really formidable in that matchup. And they come in as the 6th ranked team, while Hampton is 3. So this is a 3-6 matchup for this battle this week, and fascinating on many different sides. But both of these teams are playing some relatively good football. So I'm interested to see, Drew, what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup?
For the Theological and Normal Institute, for those who do not know, that's what Howard used to be called before they were called Howard, because they have not earned the name. I don't want to say Howard like Brian does, because you best may think your computer's buffering when I'm saying it. So I'm gonna call them by their former name, the Theological Institute. So for them, they have got to establish their running game in this particular game. We know they have a hell of a running game back there. My question is, who's going to be the quarterback for Howard? Starting quarterback did not play last week against Morehouse. Backup quarterback played, but it was against Morehouse. So what's going to be out there? But speaking of quarterbacks, Hampton has their own quarterback. I don't know if it's a controversy or what, but they've been playing 2 guys all season long. Last year's starter and the starter from 2 years ago. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. But if past performance is indicative of future results, you have to ride with Hampton in this game, because Howard, even when they've had the better team, has shown that they will find a way to take defeat from the jaws of victory.
Good stuff. Let's go to this last game. I'm sure this one that Charles specifically has an interest in. It's in Grambling. I've learned over the years that as much as Jackson has had their way with Grambling and Jackson, maybe, it's certainly different in Grambling. It seems like Grambling, will, no matter what type of team they have, what ways it comes down to those games, that Jackson State has had a problem winning in Grambling. But they turned the table as they won their last game in Grambling. So it's interesting when you talk about this matchup here. Is a matchup that features number 2 Jackson State that vaulted back in the poll rankings. Preseason, they were in the top 7. They slightly dropped out, but they not only jumped in, but they jumped all the way back to number 2 after dominating Southern. I'm sure their fans would feel glorious, even though, again, this doesn't count in the conference races. They could find a way to put one on Grambling and take 2 L's to the Louisiana schools and say the Louisiana for them stands for L. But with that being said, I'm fascinated with this matchup when you talk about 2 versus 5, with Grambling State coming into the rankings this week at number 5. AD Drew, what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup?
Who are these teams that we have playing here, Dr. Cavil? These teams have played in FBS, they played in FCS, and they played in Division II. So who are these 2 teams that we are talking about here, Dr. Cavil? This is the first time, I think, this year where we're really going to find out what each of these teams are made of. Both these teams have shown that they want to run the ball. Grambling has the preseason player of the year, Miles Crawley, as a signal caller, one of the few quarterbacks of our HBCUs that you could actually call by name. So what are we going to see here? It's really going to be interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. Grambling has to go into the hole for this game.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Grambling's at the hole. Jackson has to go into the hole. It's just something about playing in that hole that concerns me. But if there's ever a team that can find a way to pull it out, I think if it's a close game, I think I have to go edge Jackson State. If it's a blowout, I think it's going to be a blowout by Grambling.
Good one. Charles, you can talk about this game, but you can start with the Howard Hampton. I know I didn't give you a little space to give any final thoughts on that, and then you can break down your thoughts on this Jackson Grambling matchup.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to Howard Hampton, I think AD touched on it, and what would be interesting, I know both teams can run the football when you talk about Jared Hunter, Eden James, and Elijah Burrs for Hampton. But I think that game does come down to quarterback play. Jalen Tolbert, like you mentioned, big day last week against Morehouse. MEAC Offensive Player of the Week. Does he come back? Do you ride the hot hand and have him play in this huge rivalry game. And that being said, Chris Zellis and Malcolm Mays for Hampton. Who is the hot hand, because they've been playing two quarterbacks, if you will, over the past few weeks. And that was a statement game, I think, with Hampton against Norfolk State. They really smashed them, almost put up 500 yards total offense, if I'm not mistaken, 466 yards of total offense. But that will be a game where you sort of wonder, can Howard figure out whatever it is to get their H back? So all strengths at some point have to come to an end. I like Howard in that particular game. Fast forward, let's talk about Jackson State and Grambling. You talk about fighting ghosts. Grambling has always been a ghost for Jackson State up until recent history. Jackson State riding, if I'm not mistaken, 3-game win streak against Grambling. And, you're talking about a generation that doesn't know anything about those ghosts of previous years. So you're talking about going into Grambling, always a tough place to play in the hole. It's going to be a near capacity crowd from what I'm understanding. But I think, Jackson State is up for this game. This, I think, will be the first week they really get a quarterback that can test them downfield. So can they get to Miles Crowley? I think that's going to be the big question in this game. Jackson State, thus far, from a defensive perspective, they've looked apart. They are a very physical team. Grambling, it should be of concern that they gave up over 200 yards last week to Texas A&M Commerce. And that's something Jackson State can do. They can run the ball, and they have multiple backs. Where you're talking about Tyron Terrell, who's a scat back. You're talking about others that can, Irv Mulligan, who can run in between the tackles. They got two other backs that I call kind of Swiss Army knives. Not only can they run the ball, but they can catch the ball out of the backfield. That's going to be a tall task for Grambling to kind of stop. So I'm expecting Jackson State to go into the hole and get the win and kind of keep the momentum going.
Good stuff for this football week. We talked about 4 top 10 matchups. Couldn't ask for more of a great weekend. Catch us in the morning. We'll be back at it. We'll talk with the men's and give you some insight of what the men of the SWAC in terms of the media they think coming into the season. So jump back up with us in the morning. We'll give you that updates. We'll give you some updates to let you know if we'll have our Friday edition of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab as well. On Saturday, make sure you turn in for Carlos Brown. And then on Sunday, we do our weekend edition of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We'll unveil for the second week, we'll unveil our top 7 teams in the major division. And then you can close out the night with Brian and Jamie as they get it going for SportsWrap. That being said, I want to say thank you for listening to Inside HBCU Sports Lab. AD, go ahead.
Want to remind everybody, after Doctor does his closeout, switch over to ESPN Plus. Ebba Waters and Benedict are playing right now.
Good catch. Appreciate you with the love representing as you provide us with the television edition of what goes on in the SWAC and keeping your eyes. You're releasing your places to watch HBCU games. Are you going to be able to release that this week?
I'll be working on that after we get off this podcast tonight. Hopefully, I should have that posted sometime tomorrow.
So check out BCSN and you'll find out everywhere that you can see your SB games at. You start tonight. With that being said, again, thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, come from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We had none other than A.D. Drew today. We appreciate him getting off the sidelines, talking about Altani getting it done. 3 home runs today and a massive beat down by the Dodgers. 20-plus points put on the board. Wow. You talking about doing it in this style? He certainly did that. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab as Charles shakes his head. With Mike Washington, Charles Bishop on assignment. We wish him traveling grace as well as us, Charles, as we travel back tomorrow to get it done. And Charles continues with another trip as he moves on for the weekend to have a little bit of fun. So safe travels to you, Charles, particularly. And A.D. Drew, continue to be safe as well. We appreciate everything you do. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. Sundays at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time. Check us out. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. Just follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I know it's X, but I call it what I want. Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. We are KENYATTACAVIL. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. Facebook and YouTube inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
80?
For the second time today, lecture.
Finally, it is truly dismissed.
Have a good night. Ever Waters, Benedict, ESPN Plus.
Thank you.